All right. Well, hello again. I hope you had a good time last week with the fellowship dinner. I hope you guys enjoyed the food. Those of you who were here partaking. Jerry and Pam, I hope your kids enjoyed what we did back there. I didn't get a chance to ask you guys earlier, but I hope they enjoyed it. I am sorry that I didn't make it all the way through the movie last week. I did start falling asleep, and I started snoring, and I abruptly woke up and saw my wife mouthing to me, "You're snoring," from 15 feet away. I was like, it's time for me to go home. So I'll have to drink some more coffee the next time and pick a different seat. It was way too comfortable. But let me share with you what the Lord has been speaking to me and sharing with me. He's been maybe like cultivating this in me for the last couple months, honestly. There was, I think it's a couple months now, there was a Sunday school back there where Russ touched on one little corner of some subject, and all of a sudden it sent me, just diving right into it. And so if you don't come for Sunday school, please come check it out. It'll send you into new depths of studying the Word and studying who Jesus is and what He's sharing with you. And I am a testament to that. But what He has been cultivating on my heart, on my mind, is navigating the storms of life. And no sooner did I start, or did I finish my outline for a sermon on this, when all of a sudden I started facing storms in my life. And it was tough, right? It was not anything crazy, it was just life. And I was the big dummy that wasn't even looking at my outline on this subject to get me through it. I'm sitting there struggling, and it was a simple word from our pastor that clicked it into me, that the Lord has been speaking to me on this, and here I am not following through. And so I got back into my notes, I got back into what He's been sharing with me, and it helped me navigate through that. And so I want to share that with you today. Let's start off in Matthew chapter 8. We're going to be in verse 23. Matthew 8, verse 23. Right? He faced storms in His earthly ministry. There was a few storms that are just perfect for this time. And he faced storms. And this is the first one, right? Matthew 8, verse 23. Then Jesus got into the boat and started across the lake with his disciples. Suddenly, a fierce storm struck the lake, with waves breaking into the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him up, shouting, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." Jesus responded, "Why are you afraid? You have so little faith." Then he got up and rebuked the wind and waves, and suddenly there was a great calm. The disciples were amazed. "Who is this man?" they asked. "Even the wind and waves obey him." All right, now skip forward a little to chapter 14. Chapter 14, verse 22. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake, while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble, far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. But about 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" Then he climbed back into the boat. The wind stopped. Then the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. So, in these two stories, we see Jesus, we see his disciples, we see them, they're hopping into a boat, they're trying to cross a body of water to get to the other side. There's psalms and there's different pictures, allegories to the Christian faith that allude to our Christian life being like that of a ship's voyage, right? They talk about it a lot going through Bible college, and you have to write your own little poem about it. And as my wife can tell you, it's a little secret, but I am very poetic, and I had a lot of fun with that assignment. But we go through things, right? We are on this ship, right? Our ship is our life. That's our journey, the way we're moving through to get to the other side. And as you're going around, there are storms. There are different waves. There's different currents. There's wind patterns that come into effect. Right? All this stuff affects your trip on this body of water. Right? And just like our life, things start happening, affecting our lives. Things start coming against us, and we're like, where'd that come from? That's a storm I didn't see on the horizon. or that's a storm I clearly sailed myself into. But things start coming at us. Right? If we look at what they're facing a storm on a lake. Right? I grew up on a lake. I grew up right next to Lake Huron, up there in Michigan. That's a lake, right? The lakes that I looked at and Googled in Israel at that time, those are tiny, those are ponds, right? I think so, but I'm whatever. But those waves, they can get pretty choppy. Those waters can get pretty rough, lake water. But it is no comparison to open ocean. Open ocean, I went on beautiful sunny day in this little fishing boat, and we're open ocean, like Indian Ocean open. And we're in this boat and we start going out, and all of a sudden the wind kicks up, and pretty soon the swells of the waves are taller than the boat. And I was sitting up in the top part of the boat, and I still couldn't see over top of the waves, and that was freaking me out. I didn't enjoy that at all. But storms do suddenly happen on those lakes, on that lake specifically, right? It's reported that just they come on all of a sudden. So when they're crossing with Jesus and it just happens out of the blue, it's a common occurrence. They also didn't have Doppler radar or meteorologists to tell them what the weather was going to be like. But it does just happen. And they are violent. They had a wooden boat. Not like something more advanced in today's boats. And like Russ has a sailboat. I'm sure that thing might have been able to handle a little bit better. Nope. He maybe buys boats like my father bought boats, the cheapest one available.
Not an ocean boat.
Okay. Water was coming into the boat as they were going across in both stories. They don't have any bilge pump pumping out water. If there's water in the boat, they're bucketing it out of the boat themselves. Let's look at the men. At least Peter, James, and John, and Andrew were at least experienced sailors, right? They were fishermen. They were on lakes like that probably all their life. They were all together, right? All 12 of them in that whatever size wooden boat. And they all feared the storm and death. Both times, though, in both storms, what they failed, what they didn't see, what they somewhat knew was Jesus was with them. Right in the first story, Jesus is right in the boat with them. Sure enough, as soon as they got to the point where they were starting to lose hope, they went running over to him. The second story, right when they're in the midst of their worst amount of trouble, Jesus is right there walking with them. In some of the different gospels that tell the story in different translations, it says that he was about to walk right past them. Just waiting. Hi guys. I'll meet you there. But he was there when they're facing their troubles. He was there. They in both stories had a moment of fear so great that they lost their faith. And Jesus said in both times, "Why do you have so little faith?" There are storms that we are going to face in our lives. There are things that we're going to come across. There are losses that are going to happen. This family that just lost their mother. That's terrible. It's painful. It hurts. I think of a few months ago when they were talking about the company in Olean that's shutting down. All those people losing their jobs. I can't remember what company it is.
Dresser Rand used to be.
So there's storms. This COVID pandemic, a storm that is hitting us again and again and again. How long have we been facing COVID? About a year and a half now. Still talking about it. People are getting vaccinated now. Mask mandates are being lifted. Things are starting to open back up. The answer for our lives, for what we do when we come across these storms, is the same answer that these disciples were learning firsthand in two stories. So to them it wasn't a story, to them it was their life. But those two instances, they went through two storms on a boat, kind of isolated from the rest of the world. They learned, one, don't go alone, ask for help. Right, as that storm starts kicking in, as that storm starts coming over, spilling over your boat into and starting to sink you, you got to ask for help. We got to ask for help from each other. We got to ask for help from Him. I was struggling. I was facing storms. I was dealing with things. And I was just doing it all myself. I was quietly sinking on my own. That is stupid. Don't do that. I have a wonderful wife sitting right next to me. I have great in-laws. There's all of you here. Wonderful leadership team, our wonderful pastor, and I said nothing. I was struggling in my own mind. You can't do that. You got to ask for help. You can't go alone. You need 12 other buddies in the boat with you. Think you don't have 12 good friends? I tell you, you're wrong, because there's more than 12 people here in this room. Next thing they learned, have faith, not fear. They got a call on the great I Am. Who is greater even than death. Right? They call on God. They call on Jesus. It's kind of like 1B to 1A that I was just talking about. Can't go alone. Can't go alone. Don't do it by yourself. Don't do it without Jesus. He is there with us. He is here with us. He's here with us now. If you have been saved, if you know Christ personally, His Spirit is in you. So you are never alone. You never need to face these things alone. And you can't believe that lie that it's all on you or that you are alone. That lie is a lie. And so we call on Him. We call on His name. We call on His power to come and change that situation in our life. They learn to trust in Him, to trust His promises and His word. There are times where I question, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? I have a great friend who has always spoken into my life the calling that God has set into my life. When I was 12, a pastor stopped the prayer part of a service to tell me that God was calling me to pastor and to preach. I was a freshman at Elam when he reconfirmed that word. And that friend who was there, who knew about it, has called me to it every step of the way. Even as other people, even as outside forces would come and speak and be like, you're going to make a great janitor. He'd be like, shut up. That man's a pastor. There is a promise on your life that Christ has paid for. There is a promise that He is speaking over every one of you. There is a calling for each of us. There is something for all of us that He has called and destined for us to do. And we got to trust and believe in that calling, that word that He's promised over us. He promised to my grandfather many years ago that he would be able to see a satellite launch for Indonesian Christian television. Don't know, my grandfather's a missionary over in Indonesia for probably close to 70 years now. last winter, we started to fear maybe he wasn't going to see that. He came down, stage 4 cancer. Everyone was very worried. Right? Doctor said you have months, weeks, if not days. His young adopted kids, who were all engaged at the time, decided we're going to get married now, because we don't know if you'll be there. He knew the promise that God had. He knew that the Lord was telling him, yes, you can see that happen. And yet, all of a sudden, the storm comes with cancer saying, no, you're not going to see tomorrow. He believed in that promise, and we started praying. And we started praying. And we started praying. And a couple months later, he went back to the doctor, completely cancer-free. He's now been back and forth to Indonesia, working, setting up the satellite and all the other stuff that he does over there. I don't really know. He's been back and forth probably half dozen times now. Strong as ever. He knew the promise of the Lord. And then lastly, we don't look away. This lesson Peter had to learn himself. We don't look away from the source of life. We don't look away to watch the works of the thief who has come to steal, to kill, and destroy. We keep our eyes on Christ. Always. Always keep our eyes on Christ. One last storm. One last example from the life of Jesus, and then I'm closing. It's in Matthew 16. Verse 21. From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem, and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day he would be raised from the dead. But Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Heaven forbid, Lord, he said, this will never happen to you. Jesus turned to Peter and said, get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap for me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If any of you want to be my followers, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang onto your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world, but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your own soul? For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and will judge all people according to their deeds. And I tell you the truth, some standing here right now will not die before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." This last storm, it's your closest friends coming to you. It's the persecution for the sake of Christ. It's picking up your cross and following him. As he came here, came to earth, went to the cross, and gave up his life so that we may live. This gospel story of giving of yourself for him, that you might be saved. This is that last storm that we face, that we all need to desperately do the right thing. Will we lose our life for his sake? I pray that we all do. I pray that every single one of us will find that courage to give of ourselves to glorify him, that will give of ourselves to speak that life in public places. Lord, I just thank you for this day. I thank you for the words that you have given me to share. Lord, I pray that they were heard. I pray that they will cultivate in us a united front against any storm. Lord, I pray that you draw us closer together with each other, that we won't fear, that we will continue to trust in your word, in your promises. I pray that we always fix our eyes on you, that we continue to hold to you that we cling to you. Lord, as we go from here, Lord, I just pray for your courage and your wisdom. I pray for divine encounters in this week, opportunities to speak life into the lives of strangers, into the lives of friends, into the lives of family. Lord, help us distinguish, help us discern when others are going through storms of life, that we may reach out like you reached out for Peter. I thank you for all that you do in our lives and all you're going to do in this week. I just glorify your name. Amen.